Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Shalom. I'm David Mencer, Israeli government spokesman. Today is Thursday, the 6th of June, day 244 of the October 7th war. Tomorrow marks 8 months since the Hamas army of terror invaded our borders. Israel's conditions for ending the war have not changed. The destruction of Hamas's military and governing capabilities, the freeing of all of our 124 hostages, and ensuring that Gaza no longer poses a threat to Israel. All of our objectives are within reach. Again, this war could end this afternoon, if Hamas lay down their arms and release all our hostages. We'll begin today with an update on IDF casualties. Since the outset of the war, IDF fatalities have unfortunately risen to 646. I have the unenviable task to tell you about the passing of First Sergeant in the Reserves, Rafael Caudas, who was 39 years old, from Sur Hadassah. Rafael fell in a Hezbollah suicide drone attack, an attack with a drone laden with explosives on Israel's northern border. Excuse me. Sergeant Major Zied Mazarib was just 34 from Zarzir in the Galilee. He fell in battle in southern Gaza. There are no words of mine that can assuage the pain of their parents and their families. We embrace them and those dear families who have lost their precious heroes, our sons and daughters in this war for our very existence. The price of this war is extremely heavy and it's very painful. Each casualty is a world unto itself. May their memories be a blessing forever. As I mentioned, today is June 6th, the 80th anniversary of D-Day, when Allied troops landed on the beaches of Normandy in France to begin the liberation of Europe from Nazi tyranny during World War II. We here think in Israel of the sacrifice made by young soldiers sent off to France to uproot evil. And we here in Israel pay tribute to that sacrifice, to those that did not come home, to those that paid the ultimate sacrifice, to the row upon row of Allied graves in northern France where white crosses are interspersed with stars of David. To the youth of the fallen soldiers we pay tribute. The similarities are not lost on us here today. In Gaza, we also uproot the tyranny of an evil enemy. Just as the Allies were determined, we too are determined. This is our mission. We are steadfast. We will not waver. We too are fighting for our freedom. We too are expecting all reasonable, civilized people in the world to unite against a sick, murderous ideology that brainwashes children at a young age and turns people into monsters who are capable of inhumane crimes. We too are liberating Gaza from Hamas, and we too will win. Now an operational update from Gaza. Last night, a Hamas compound embedded inside an UNRWA school. A Hamas compound embedded inside an UNRWA school in the area of Nuseirat was precisely targeted and hit. The school had terrorists who actually took part in the murderous attack of October the 7th. We took them out. We targeted Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorists of the Nukba forces. They obviously sought to exploit the school and shelter there. 3 rooms in the school, in the building, were used by Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorists. We assessed that 20 to 30 terrorists were in the compound at the time of the strike. We targeted with precision strikes on the specific classrooms, What we know, of course, we know that the terrorists were, what they were doing inside a UN school, they were hiding. The compound was used for staging attacks and as a forward operating base. Our strike was based on intelligence and used precise munitions, using surveillance and intelligence. You know, we actually called it off twice just to be sure that we were precise and to limit any unwanted civilian casualties. We will announce the terrorists we targeted shortly. I want to reiterate the steps that were taken to reduce the risk of harming uninvolved civilians during the strike, including conducting aerial surveillance and additional intelligence information. Also this week in Rafah, troops discovered a tunnel shaft inside a child's bedroom, together with a butcher's knife next to the tunnel shaft. You can see the pictures of the pink-walled child's bedroom with cuddly toys strewn around on the shelves and on the beds, but hiding a tunnel shaft. You can see those pictures on the IDF website or on the IDF Telegram site. Next, I want to draw your attention to a report on the front page of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs website put out this week. You know, much of the criticism of Israel over this war in Gaza has been focused around the libel of starvation. The 18th of March report from the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, the IPC, defamed this country. It was the basis for much of the attacks on Israel from the ICC and the ICJ. Our report comprehensively debunks the claims made there. You can see the report online, but the headline, in a nutshell, is that internationally renowned health and medical academic experts in the fields of nutrition and public health show that the amount of food entering Gaza via trucks and airdrops provided more than adequate provision for the nutritional supply for the local population. The ultimate evidence, of course, though, which debunks all of these NGOs and UNRWA's covering up for Hamas, is that there was no, there is no, and there will never be starvation in Gaza, despite the best efforts of Hamas. As if to reiterate this point, just yesterday 140 aid trucks went in and were transferred to Gaza, 101 trucks via the Kerem Shalom crossing and 39 trucks via the Erez crossing. And just another reminder I made yesterday, again this has received almost no coverage in the international media. The Gazan side of Kerem Shalom is still at full capacity with the contents of 1,100 aid trucks just waiting to be picked up by UN aid agencies. 1,100 aid trucks, all those supplies just waiting for the UN to pick them up and distribute them. To the north now, and President Herzog said just last night, and I quote, "Israel is attacked every day for long months now by Iran's proxies in Lebanon who crudely violate international treaties. The world must wake up and understand that Israel is left with no choice but to defend its citizens." So that's the end of our briefing today. I will now take your questions, which you should put in the chat together with your news outlet. First question I can see here is from David Clement from the News Forum. The Associated Press is reporting this morning's airstrike on a school which killed 23 children. The IDF has said that the school was being used as a Hamas compound. Has the IDF or the Israeli government released any information to support the claim that the school was being used by Hamas? Thank you, David. I dealt with that quite comprehensively in the statement I just made, and we will be releasing the terrorists who were targeted there. Needless to say, the Hamas Health Ministry are habitual liars. They habitually overinflate figures. I've laid out in some detail all of the steps that Israel took to prevent any harm to civilians. These were targeted strikes in 3 individual rooms in this United Nations school. We are investigating the issue and will come out with the results of our investigation very, very shortly. Next question from Joel Pollack at Breitbart News. If Hamas agrees to the terms proposed by the Biden administration for a hostage deal, will Israel accept the terms, or will there have to be additional details as suggested by the Prime Minister? If so, would there be a deal at all? Thank you very much for that question, Joel. As we have made clear, our 3 objectives in this war are consistent with the terms we wish to end this war with. And that is, of course, to destroy Hamas's military and governing capabilities, to ensure that Gaza can never again pose a threat to this country, and to get our 124 stolen people back home to Israel. The ones who are with us and the ones who are no longer with us. All of our efforts are going towards those 3 objectives. Of course, if any of those 3 objectives, for instance, leaving Hamas in power, remain, well, that is simply a non-starter. We've made that very, very clear, and I think for that there is backing across this country. Next question from Fabiana Magri from La Stampa in Italy. Any political, not military, comment about the disputed raid on the UNRWA school in Gaza? Thanks. Thank you, Fabiana, for that question. I've made a comprehensive statement about the issue of that school which was targeted. We know that we targeted 20 to 30 terrorists that were actually engaged in the October 7th massacre, both from Hamas and Islamic Jihad. We tried very, very hard to limit any civilian casualties, including calling off the strike a number of times. The IDF is analysing any further civilian casualties, which we hope there were not, and we made very, very sure, we tried our hardest to ensure that there are not civilian casualties. Ultimately, I will say this from the Prime Minister's office, any casualties of civilians within Gaza are of course tragic, but they are solely the responsibility, the blame lies foursquare at the feet of Hamas. Hamas started this war, they perpetuate this war. It's the reason this war carries on is because they refuse to bring back our hostages, they refuse to lay down their arms, but we are working hard to ensure that we eliminate the last vestiges of Hamas within Gaza. Next question from Jim Williams at Zenga News Service. This week, the World Central Kitchen conducted a press briefing, and since their return to Gaza on April 29th with COGAT's assistance, they have distributed nearly 7 million meals. They are surpassing their target by serving over 250,000 meals daily to Gazan citizens through their 70 kitchens, along with providing food boxes. The question arises, if WCK can collaborate with COGAT so effectively, why can't the UN identify other groups to take over the role of UNRWA? That's an excellent question, Jim. That's the question which we are urging an answer to every single day. We know that, for one thing, the reason why we've worked with WCK is that UNRWA and other parts of the UN are hopelessly inefficient. They've done a terrible job, a much worse job than any other aid scenario anywhere else in the world, and it's Gazans which suffer. But we've tried to work around UNRWA by literally flooding the area with food, and that's shown. So all of these doomsday scenarios of famine in Gaza, they have all shown, every single one of them has been shown to be false. Of course, it's unlikely that any news media will report that, but those are the facts. And as we like to say here in the Prime Minister's office, the facts don't lie. We know that more than 600,000 tons of aid have gone in. More than 30,000 trucks have gone in, enough food for all the people in Gaza. This report, which I have pointed you to, highlighted on the front page of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs website, which came out 3 days ago on the 3rd of June, outlines and debunks that libel, that trope that we were in some medieval way starving, all those famine stories. They are all comprehensively been debunked now, and we hope that that will put rest until the next libel comes out, which invariably it will. Next question from Benjamin Brown from CNN. Can you confirm that Zaid Mazarib died in a Hamas infiltration attempt into Israel earlier this morning? Thank you for that question, Benjamin. The sad death of Zaid Mazarib was announced just before we came on air for this briefing, literally minutes before. So I haven't got any information on the way which that poor soldier lost his life defending this country. All I can tell you that it was in the south of Gaza, but I'm sure that further information will come out shortly. As I mentioned, that information came out just as we came in on air, and I wanted to be sure to we wanted to be sure to include it in the briefing today. All of our soldiers that have paid this ultimate sacrifice, this ultimate sacrifice of laying down their lives for this country, for their fellow countrymen, Jews and Arabs and Druze and Christians, which fight together in the IDF, all of them that have been injured, take a trip to an Israeli rehabilitation hospital and see the soldiers that have lost limbs in this war, and how they almost to a person say the same thing, that they want to get prosthetic limbs and go back and join their units and support their comrades in arms to defend this country. We are extremely proud of our armed forces. They've done the impossible. They've done a phenomenal thing. They've uprooted, they destroyed 20 battalions of Hamas in Gaza out of the 24. We're going for the rest of them. They've achieved feats which are literally unmatched in modern urban warfare. We know that the casualty rate is down to 1-to-1, which is a phenomenally low. The UN average is, of course, 1-to-9. So we're very proud of that. But of course, every civilian killed is a tragedy, but for Hamas, of course, it's a tragedy. So we're extremely proud of all of our armed forces, and we continue to be in awe of the professionalism they've shown. Many of the naysayers and the doomsayers told us on October the 8th that we couldn't defeat Hamas, that their tunnel network was impossible to destroy, that we would lose thousands and thousands and thousands of troops. Of course, 646 is a horrendously high number from October the 7th until today, but it is a remarkably low number that's of no recompense, of course, of little relief to the poor families of soldiers that have lost their loved ones and those soldiers that have made the ultimate price. But our soldiers, with professionalism and also using learnings from this war, they've learnt extremely quickly how to firstly fight Hamas in this dense urban area, to fight in tunnels as well, and of course to limit civilian casualties. Certainly from the start of the war until now, we've learnt a lot from these lessons. They've been difficult lessons to learn, but our IDF have performed exceedingly well, and all of us here are absolutely proud of our soldiers and the remarkable work which they continue to do day in, day out. Next question from Mark Anderson from AFP. Can you confirm the number of people who were wounded yesterday in the Hezbollah drone strike on Khufeish, and how many of them are Israeli soldiers? Thank you for that question, Mark. I've only seen media reports of 9 people being wounded. Can I ask you, can I put you through to the IDF, who will be, those are from media reports, as I said, but can I put you through to the IDF, who will be able to answer that question more comprehensively? Next question from Henrietta Charkar from UNRWA. Sorry, excuse me, Henrietta, you're from Reuters, of course, not UNRWA. On the UNRWA school strike in Nusrat, number one, first question is, a military statement said the targeted militants took part in the October 7th attack. What's the evidence for that? So, firstly, Henrietta, I would call them terrorists. They are terrorists. They are Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorists. They weren't militant. They weren't militant in their views. They participated in the October 7th massacre, where babies were shot in their cribs, where people were shot in their beds, where women and men were raped mercilessly. We've seen the evidence here in Israel and the films made by Sheryl Sandberg, formerly of Facebook, whereby the evidence of rapes on the poor people at the Nova Music Festival and elsewhere have been shown, and they are far too ghastly. The evidence is far too ghastly to share with you here. So they're certainly not militants. They are terrorists. You asked for the evidence. What evidence is there for that? As I mentioned, the IDF shortly will release the terrorists that we targeted and that we hit. The second question that Henrietta Charkar from Reuters asked, that the military said it was a precise strike. What munitions were used? Thank you. We will. I imagine that the IDF will release that information shortly. I haven't got the information for you. That's probably the IDF will be able to answer that question. Henrietta asks, thirdly, the military said it conducted aerial surveillance before the strike to minimize civilian casualties. How many civilians could it see in the school compound in that surveillance? Thank you for that question. That's probably a question for the IDF, and we will shortly produce the evidence, as we did, as we have done in the past. Look, Henrietta, where there have been mistakes in this war, where Hamas and Islamic Jihad embedding themselves into civilians in a hope to save their skins, we will always try our hardest to minimize civilian casualties. Always, always. It's a tragedy for anyone unconnected with Hamas to lose their lives. It literally is a tragedy. But ultimately, the blame for this, all of this conflict, must lie with Hamas. It must lie foursquare at their feet. That's where the blame lies. But where we've made mistakes, we've held our hands up. But the IDF is looking into this particular case and other reports that there have been of civilian casualties, which I can't confirm at the present time. Next question from Mark Anderson. No, I've done that question already. The next question from Fred Ager from Interplanetary TV. Some 17 state leaders released a letter calling on Hamas to agree to the latest hostage ceasefire three-phase agreement announced by US President Joe Biden on Friday and agreed by Israel. Earlier today, the Saudi Ashraq news outlet reported that Hamas had circulated a memo rejecting the offer, but Israel has yet to receive a formal response. Has Israel received a formal response from Hamas thus far? So in keeping with the way we've conducted ourselves, thank you, Fred, for that question. In keeping with the way that we've conducted ourselves throughout this war, we are not commenting on the everyday movements and the everyday discussions during these negotiations. The lives literally hang in the balance. We have of course seen that letter from the White House with that with those state leaders, with those heads of state putting forward their views. So I haven't we haven't got anything more to add to that. The only thing I will say is that, you know, throughout this war, Hamas have more often than not said no. They've walked away, and we know from the interlocutors, from the negotiators from Egypt and from Qatar, as well as the US, they invariably blame Hamas for walking away. Secretary of State Blinken has often talked about a generous offer from Israel. Don't forget that many of these offers mean the release of terrorists with blood on their hands that have killed Israeli citizens. But of course, we want our people back. We know it's of supreme importance to all of us here in Israel to get our people home. So I can't comment on whether Hamas has accepted or rejected. Ultimately, though, we don't believe anything that Hamas says until those poor terrorists are in our hands and back in Israel. Those poor hostages, are back in Israel. Then we know they are safe, and we know that we have them back. So, next question. Any more questions? No more questions? No. Okay, so that was the last question. Thank you very, very much for joining us here today. There'll be the next briefing on... Joel Pollock has a question on Jerusalem Day. Sorry, can you scroll up a bit and let's have a look at that question. Yes, there we go. Second question from Joel Pollock. Can you, from Breitbart News, can you comment on the images and videos of Israeli youth involved in confrontations with a reporter and others during the Jerusalem Day processions here in Jerusalem? Thank you very much for that question, Joel. In terms of Jerusalem Day, which was celebrated yesterday, since the city of Jerusalem was reunified in 1967, that is, of course, the first time, I think, in history that Israel has guaranteed access to all religions, access to all of the religions' holy sites. And that's something we're extremely proud of and goes through the very DNA of this country. I think the overwhelming majority of people that visited Jerusalem yesterday and celebrated the reunification of this city, Jerusalem is, of course, right at the very essence of our hearts. The famous words of the Israeli military in 1967 of Har Habayit Biyadenu, which means the Temple Mount is in our hands. They are indelibly linked in every Israeli's minds. We know the special thing that it is to have access to the very heart. Jerusalem has been the capital of the Jewish people for thousands of years, of course, even before, when London, for instance, was still a bend in the River Thames, or a swamp on the side of the River Thames. So Jerusalem has been the capital of Israel for I think at least 3,000 years. King David established it. King Solomon built the temple there, and it's the very essence of our people. So there is much to celebrate. Where there have been unfortunate cases of boisterous young people who have acted in an incorrect way, the police did take care of these things, and they did make the appropriate arrests, which is the right thing to do. Of course, it is wrong that anyone should be attacked, certainly in the holy city of Jerusalem, of importance to so many people all around the world. But I would say that the police took care of these things, and ultimately the fact that none of this should overshadow the fact that Jerusalem, the eternal capital of the Jewish people and of Israel, where all of our government offices and the Prime Minister's office and all the government offices of this country are based, is reunited with free access to all religions. Good. I think that is the last question. So with that, I want to thank you for joining us here today. Please do stay safe, and we'll let you know when the next briefing is, most likely on Monday. Thank you very much.